So I have the cone selected, which I consider to be my wrist joint. I'm going to animation, I'm going to go to IK solvers, and I'm going to do a limb solver, because basically I've just been talking about limbs. I've been talking about legs and arms. And you can see that what happens is that it will highlight a bunch of objects, and what I want to do is this object's pivot is at the hip joint or the shoulder joint, and I'm going to click. And what that will do is it will add a controller. It will add this line and this object. And it's going to call it IK chain 1, and I'm going to call it IK arm, because I like to label things. So what we have here is this little tiny blue controller, and this basically is known as an end effector. And then we have a visual indication here which goes from our shoulder joint to our wrist joint. And this basically is our IK controller. So the first thing you'll notice is that if I go in and I select our base and I move the base, you'll see that our wrist will stay in position. Note that the lamp cone still is rotating about, and if I pull this too far away, you can see that it will start to stretch out, and you'll see that it forms kind of like a straight line. It's almost like there's an elastic band there going, oh yeah, this is where I want to be. Okay. The other thing you notice is that if I go in and select this little blue controller and I move it around, I can now move the child. I can move the lamp, and what will happen is that I can do squash and stretch really nice and easy now. Don't have to do a load of rotations. On the other hand, if I select the cone and pull it, you will wreck your rig. Why there isn't a big warning, I don't know. The easy way to solve this basically is to make sure that you freeze this object, or make sure that you set its controller not editable, or just be really, really careful. Or what most animators do is they put a dummy object in, which is what we're going to do. And you will see this a lot. So what we're going to do is we are going to make ourselves a spline controller. And in this case, I'm just going to create a circle and put it on the ground. So what I've done is I've gone to our create panel, I've gone to shapes, I've gone to circle, and I've drawn myself a circle, and I've stuck it on the ground. And what I'm going to do is I need to align this to this pivot, this end effector controller, this blue thing. So the way to do that is I select circle, and then I go up to here, and there's a little button that says align, and I click on that, and then I go over to here and I find the blue controller, and this is where your Counter-Strike skills come into real count. Do not click on the wrong object, right? You must be pixel perfect.
You can also select it from the list on the left.
Yeah, you can, providing you know what it's called. IK arm. Right, and then you want pivot to pivot. I also recommend you set the rotation as well, and you hit apply and OK, and you will now have a sexy little circle around this object. Okay, now if I go and move my sexy little circle, it doesn't do anything, because what I need to do is I need to set a constraint. What I want to happen is when I move my sexy little circle, I want to move this blue controller. So I'm going to need to set a constraint up. I don't want it to be in the hierarchy, because I want my hierarchy and my controllers completely separate, and that's an important distinction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my controller, my IK ARM system. I'm going to go to animation. I'm going to set a constraint, and I am going to set a position constraint. And then I'm going to click on my sexy little circle. And it sets up a controller there. And now what happens when I move my sexy little circle? It moves the end effector, and the end effector moves the IK chain. Okay, so that's an important system that we've got there. The other thing I'm going to do is, again, going in and selecting my lamp and rotating it, again, is an absolute pain, and I want to make things as easy as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and select my cone lamp, and I'm going to set up another constraint. This time it's going to be an orientation constraint, and I'm going to set it to my circle. And you'll see that what will happen is it will flip round because it wants to align to the circle. And the good thing now is that I can now rotate this, and it controls both the rotation of the lamp head and the movement. So I have one single control mechanism that's controlling two objects. But the important thing is those two objects are key to my control. I don't want to have to switch between objects